The information shared on this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. While we discuss topics related to mental health, well-being, and emotional support, we are not providing therapy or medical services. Always seek the advice of your physician, psychologist, psychiatrist, or other qualified mental health provider with any questions you may have regarding a mental health condition. If you are in crisis, feeling unsafe, or need immediate support, please contact a mental health professional or emergency services in your area. The views expressed by guests and hosts are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of any affiliated organizations or institutions.
Get inspired, get motivated with M.A.Y.A and the M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition podcast.
Something that I take pride in is trying to be forward thinking outside the box, challenging myself. And as I challenge myself, hopefully I challenge you.
Find M.A.Y.A on Twitter and Instagram at M.A.Y.A_Akai. On Facebook at M.A.Y.A Akai Presents.
We're going to talk health, wealth, fitness, mental health, financial, lots of different things that can empower you as you seek out the ambition that you're pursuing.
Or get everything M.A.Y.A at M.A.Y.A_Akai.com.
Namaste, everyone. Welcome back, or welcome to another episode of M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition. I'm your host, if you don't know, M.A.Y.A Akai. And today we're breaking down a concept that sounds beautiful in love songs and rom-com movies, but gets incredibly messy in real life. We're talking about dividing the line between unconditional and conditional love, specifically how these two ideas shape many of the commitments that we are in. So with that being said, if you're a new listener or viewer, I always just say, buckle up for safety, because it could be an unexpected bumpy ride. You might just happen to have an epiphany about something that you've been struggling with, or maybe never even considered until you've listened to the podcast. So I always just say, we do deep thought here, but be prepared that this could be something that's going to elevate you, because growth requires a little bit of being uncomfortable. And with that being said, before I jump into my returning listeners, I've been having a great international response, and I love everybody who has embraced me. So to my listeners who have come on board from Chile and Italy, and apparently I am all the rage in Japan. I don't know why, but either way, I love it. I love the love. Keep bringing it. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I really, really appreciate, of course, my returning listeners or viewers. You already know what we do here. This time is about you. So I always say, relax, find that space that can allow you for the next 35, 45 minutes to really kind of gather and take this in. I always recommend grabbing, pen and paper. And of course, it's 6:30. So it's, 5 o'clock somewhere else. Maybe not, but grab a beverage of your choice, coffee, tea, wine, beer, whatever it is. This time is just for you. Now, a lot's going to go into this episode, but with that being said, it's okay. If you've happened to miss any of the episodes that I've had, don't fret. It's okay. You can always find episodes on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Audibles, Spotify. Pretty much if it's a podcast platform, you can find me without a doubt. Just search M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition. I always say, though, the easy way to get around this is to subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is M.A.Y.A Speaks to You. And hey, everybody, I finally got my act together. You can actually use that handle, whether it's on Facebook, YouTube, X, Instagram, even on TikTok, but I really haven't got my TikTok weight up yet. But all you got to do is search at M.A.Y.A Speaks to You, and voila, everything M.A.Y.A is right there. But remember, if you're a returning listener, I've tried to make things as easy for you as I can. You can always take M.A.Y.A on the go. What do you mean? If you don't know what that means, I actually have an app. Now, you know how I feel about shameless, self-promotion, but I try to make it easy for people to kind of work on their mental health. So why not put it into the palm of your hands? So if you have not downloaded the app yet, shame on you. You should get it. You can find it pretty much everywhere you get your podcast from. So you download anything from. So the Apple Store, Google Play, Amazon Audibles, you can scan these codes, but don't worry, because if you don't scan them, I'm at the top of the page. I'll have a QR code and you can scan it and I'll tell you what it's for. But this is going to be the easiest way to keep Maya with you on the go, and you can be working on your mental health on the fly. Go figure that. You can't beat that, right? So don't fear. If you cannot, find, the time to always listen, you can always listen to all these episodes after the fact. So that's how we keep things moving. Don't worry about it. Okay. So let's dive into this episode, which, by the way, I have been itching to talk about this episode. Unconditional versus conditional love. The danger of a blank check commitment. Now, that's a lot to say, and I'm not sure how many people really have taken that in, because it's a kind of a lofty title for this episode, but it means everything, because so many of us have a certain idea. In fact, so many of us are taught that true love means no matter what, I love you. But I have a question for you. Is unconditional commitment, aka love, actually healthy, or can it potentially be a recipe for resentment and, in many cases, disaster? Because often if you go and look at relationships that did not work, and you probably were thinking through that unconditional love lens, there was a lot there that was missing. And the key word was probably conditions that most people don't have, which is interesting because almost everything in life has terms and conditions. Yet we get to relationships and somehow we think that model is not supposed to work. So it gets really messy, but we're going to break that down, talk about those dividing lines between unconditional and conditional love, especially in meaningful relationships, usually adult romantic relationships. We're going to explore why unconditional love is a beautiful idea, but unconditional commitments, because we learned we're separating two things out here. Unconditional love versus unconditional commitment are two separate things, can be dangerous. There are going to be three things we're going to have some takeaways, how we're going to dive into this episode. One, we're going to talk about how healthy conditions act as vital boundaries and important, and you probably just don't understand their purpose in your relationship. Two, why accountability actually creates growth. And three, how you can deeply love someone while still protecting your peace. See, that's what this episode is about. Being able to love someone while protecting your emotional and mental well-being, which equates into what? Peace. So that's what we're aiming to talk about in this episode, how you can walk away understanding those things. Because let's be honest, we were not taught to look at love with conditions. And what's interesting when we talk about unconditional love versus conditional love, again, this is the danger of writing a blank check, because if you tell someone I have no conditions on how I'm going to love you, it's a free-for-all. You've pretty much handed them a blank check or given them a credit card and said, run it up. It doesn't matter about the debt. As long as you're happy, the outcomes, I'm not even considering what they look like for me. So what's interesting is that let's start and talk about the idea of unconditional. It's always important, if you're going to have a conversation, create a framework for the conversation. So let's talk about unconditional, what that means in this conversation. Often unconditional in its meaning, if we looked it up in Webster's, or Merriam's, Webster's dictionary, it would say unconditional usually means absolute and finite. I look at people and say one thing for sure. Only two things in life are really absolute, and that would be death and taxes. You've heard that said a million times. When you die, it's done. Taxes are expected every single year. Get that right there? Taxes are expected to be paid every single year. You understand the terms and conditions about taxes. We're going to get into that a bit deeper about why people avoid this in relationships. And that's often why they often run ashore, because they don't have the stability or the framework put in place. So we're talking about unconditional. By dictionary terms, it usually means absolute or finite. Now let's apply that idea to love. It usually means that love is given freely, without expectation, strings, or even required terms. We often think of it kind of like our first experience with the idea of unconditional love is often a parent and child relationship, where the fact is you love that person simply because they exist. They are of you, that parent-child relationship. And that connection is considered to be deep and an unbreakable bond. That's the first time we really kind of come across the idea of unconditional love. And respectfully, in that dynamic, It makes a lot of sense, only to a certain point. Because even within that dynamic of parent and child, unconditional love can be a dangerous thing. Because to say that I love you with no expectations, no strings or requirements means I'm going to accept whatever you give me. And right now, if anybody is sitting in a relationship that seems fractured with their family or their children, I'm going to tell you, unconditional love is probably the thing that has made you emotionally paralyzed to be able to act to either fix it or you become avoidant. But that's another conversation. Just think about that. So we first learned about the idea of unconditional love from the love we have with family, especially our parents. So let's say that. If that love happens to be fragmented, how do you carry that forward as an adult? Because life is very Freudian, as much as we maybe, don't want to admit that. But so often, our first experience in life is going to shape who we develop into early in adulthood. Does not mean it has to be sustainable if it makes no sense. Keep that in the back of your mind. Okay, so let's start with the idea. So we talked about what unconditional love is, and our first experience is usually really deeply rooted within our parent-child relationships. You start out being the receiver of what is unconditional love from your parents, hopefully. And then when you progressed and been a parent, you probably then, issued out unconditional love to your kids. But I'm going to tell you this, that's a different relationship. So when we talk about specifically romantic relationships, people often, because they've learned or they think that unconditional love is the way, you strive for that in your relationships. We vow, if you think about it, in marriage, you say for better or worse, for sickness and health. All those things is what you say when you decide to marry someone. But did you give it deep thought what that really means? Some of it seems pretty straightforward. Sickness and health. I should not dump you if you become ill. That would not be good. That's not good love. But if you think about it, the better or worse, what does that mean? That's a very broad thing. And to say I accept better or worse doesn't make sense. I'll be honest, even sickness and health can be a slippery slope, because I have worked with people who have had spouses or partners who have poor health and refuse to do the right things to get better. Ask yourself a question. If that causes you a lot of mental duress and you're dealing with a person who refuses to deal with their health, how does unconditional love play into that? Because now they're dragging you down that rabbit hole with them because they're refusing to take care of themselves. Think about what you commit to in relationships. Think deeply about that, because you can do for sickness and health and better and worse. But guess what? It should come with conditions. Ooh, what a dirty word. I said conditions because people don't believe it has a place in their relationships. But while unconditional love can exist between in romantic relationships, you have to understand that commit can be dangerous if that relationship is not truthful. If you think about it this way, there are very few exchanges in life that do not have terms and conditions. Let me give you an example. This is why relationships make no sense when they don't have conditions. If someone extends you a line of credit for, like, let's say $50,000, right? They say, here are my terms and conditions that half the time people don't read, but you tend to know the basic ones. And the basic ones tend to be this. 1, I'm lending you this credit line. 2, you're going to pay me back at this time of the month. 3, I'm going to tell you how much to pay me based on how much you spend out that credit limit. 4, if you happen to be late and don't pay me by that date, there's a late fee. And 5, if you really go beyond 30 days, not only is there a late fee, but now I'm going to report it to your credit. You understand the expectations that that creditor has of you when it extends you that line of credit. So can I ask you a question? Why would you ever walk into any relationship without terms and conditions, which honestly just translates into boundaries and expectations is what it really means. So remember, language dictates a lot of how people can receive things. So think about it. If you're in a commitment to someone and it has 0 conditions, you are essentially giving them a blank check. You are saying, no matter how you treat me, no matter if you abuse me, you lie to me, or abandon me, your responsibilities are nil because I'm going to stay. You probably don't think you've said those things, but there are unwritten words that can be said when you do not express to someone what it is that you need or expect of them. That's simply what conditions are. But because, like many words, it's given a negative connotation, people don't think it's something that needs to exist within their relationships. And there's not a single exchange you really have in life outside of relationships that exists without terms and conditions. You can't even buy a house without terms and conditions. You cannot buy a car without terms and conditions. You are not hired by your employer without terms and conditions of what they expect of you. So why would you ever walk into any relationship you have without conditions? Now, hopefully this is all starting to make sense. With that being said, you are welcome to jump into this conversation at any point of time. All you have to do is drop something into the comments, whether you're on YouTube or Facebook. I can read it, share it, and speak to it. So you can be actively involved in this conversation with me. So let me put a question on the table before we dive deeper into this. Since I've already told you, if you're acting in a relationship without terms and conditions, you are shortchanging yourself, especially if you are unhappy. The number one thing that people always say in therapy, and I always think it's interesting, is, I'm not being loved. I'm not getting what I need. There's a disconnect, all these things. And my first thing I always say is, did you ever express to that person what you needed from them? Do they understand your expectations of them? Not do you think they understand or should they understand because it's relationship etiquette, but were you clear about what you needed from them? And if you weren't, you should probably take a couple steps back and say, okay, yeah, they should have done better, but maybe they didn't know this about me, or maybe they didn't know that was an expectation. You cannot hold people's feet to the fire if you have not been clear about specific things you need. So things like honesty and respect should be givens. They really should be. But beyond that, if you have specific needs, because let's say you've had past experiences that have left a bad taste in your mouth and you've now put in boundaries about what you can accept, you need to express those boundaries, mental, emotional, physical, financial, spiritual, whatever it might be. It is up to you to tell that person what you need. We do not come with user manuals. By the way, that is an exercise I'm working for with people in therapy. We're going to create a user manual of them. Because once you understand what you need to operate properly and to be optimal, then you can share with others how they can operate you and you can be optimal. With that being said, not a bad idea, right? Because we'd never give ourselves that deep of thought. It's about that mind shift change. So here's a question I have for you. Does that make sense that romance or love would end up in being resentment or abuse because you failed to be clear about what you needed? You do understand, by choosing not to express your needs clearly to a partner, a family member, whoever, that is low level self-sabotage without you even knowing it. Sometimes people are people pleasers, so they think they're doing the right thing with somebody. But what they don't realize is they're often self-sabotaging their own emotional and mental state, because they have not expressed their needs. They're so worried about what someone else needs and how they feel, they minimize themselves. By the way, that unconditional love thing, remember I said earlier, that seed was planted in our head as children to think less about you and more about someone else. And then you're told, when you consider your own feelings, oh, you're just selfish. Oh, am I though? Am I selfish for telling you that you've extended a boundary, that this is too much for me? I cannot handle that capacity. I'm not there with you. I don't have the bandwidth. But because it doesn't meet that person's expectation or needs, now somehow you've been made to feel like there's something wrong with you. So then you just figure, I'll comply because it's way more important that they're happy than my happiness. That's an imbalance that doesn't make sense. And that's when people feel they have to be unconditional, absolute, go along with anything. That's when you are self-sabotaging. So it doesn't make sense that you would align yourself in a situation that would create resentment, abuse, or even self-sabotage. No one goes into relationships thinking about it that way. But boy, how quickly can we end up there? So let's put some things on the table. I said are the three things we're going to cover. So how relationships are not created equal. Before we even jump into this deep dive about unconditional and conditional love, you really need to evaluate the value of relationships because they're not all created equal. I refer to it as there's a value equation. And I put that equation as need plus expectation equals relationship value or priority. So you may say, Maya, I'm not quite sure I understand the equation. If you're like me, I don't have a love of math either. So I'm gonna break it down. And this is not gonna you don't have to be a Rhodes Scholar to get this one. It's pretty simple. There's different relationships you have in your life. You have a role maybe as a parent. That's a different type of relationship. And the needs that you may have from your children and the expectation of your children may have a higher value expectation of them than, let's say, maybe than you have of cousin Mel or cousin Bob. Okay, you may love cousin Bob, but the expectations and need from cousin Bob is not like the expectation and needs you may have of from your children. Okay, you get how that works? Every relationship is not created equal. So when you're talking about placing value on something, you got to look at that nature of that relationship. So familiar relationships run deep. And this is often when people really feel like they got to be unconditional. I got to be that person's ride or die. I'm going to say something flat out. I will look at a person and say this. I'm confused. Why do I need to be your ride or die? Where are we going? And why does it end up that I might die? That doesn't sound like a trip I'm trying to make with you. What are you talking about? Ask the right questions. I know it sounds petty, but you start asking people questions like that. I want someone who's down for me, my ride or die. It sounds great. It sounds so passionate, but then look that person and say, oh yeah, that sounds good. What's that mean for you though? What, you want someone, your ride, where are you going? Die. What does that equate to? And it may seem too literal, but you'd be surprised the answers you get from people. And you might find, oh, no, that doesn't resonate with me. That doesn't align with my morals or values. You're maybe not the person for me. But it sounds good when people say things like that and people get wrapped up into what seems like passion and love, when ultimately you might be signing that blank check to go down a path. Or as my grandma might say, you might be writing a check, your ass can't cash. And she would say that all the time to me, don't write a check. Your ass cannot cash. May Hattie rest in peace, because when she said that, it stuck with me forever. So don't give people blank checks and get upset when it gets cashed and you can't pay what's due, because you're the one that gave them a blank check to do whatever they wanted with your emotions and your mental state, your financial and all those things. You are the gatekeeper of your emotional and mental safety. Nobody else. I don't care how much you love someone. They are not the gatekeeper of your emotional and mental safety. You are. You are the preserver of your peace. And if you think someone else is going to value it more than you should, it sounds great, because that sounds like unconditional love. You love me so much, you would never do that to me. And then it happens and you're scratching your head. You're the gatekeeper. Never lose sight of that. So figure out the value in your relationships. Obviously, children are one thing. Your spouse is different. Even friendships have needs and expectations. And if you find you're involved with people who are not meeting your needs or expectations, why are you still present in those friendships? Oh, because we've been friends for so long. What the hell does that mean? So you stick with something because you feel like it has quantity, but if the quality isn't there, why would you invest more time in something that makes no sense? You should think of all your relationships. You only make exceptions where they make sense, like your children and maybe family. And even then, be careful, because those relationships can even bleed you dry and leave you with nothing. So be careful when you say unconditional, because even those relationships you think should does not mean they are, or they're worthy of that from you. Are they worth what you are investing in them? By the way, all these episodes have been building. The last week was about, I think, emotional paralysis. There's one about economy of self. If you've been listening to these episodes, they've been building up one by one to help you change that mind shift, that you want to change the way you think about things. But you got to give yourself the information to be able to process the things that you want to change. So I'm going to tell you, there's some episodes going back that are worth listening to, because the one about the economy of self and emotional paralysis and self-preservation and what does love have to do with it if self-love is not in the relationship are 3 solid reads. Those are also episodes, and they're articles I have written as well. So I would tell you, go to maya-speaks.com and check out those articles, because they're a deep dive for you to kind of help you build and to say to yourself, this is how I need to shift my mindset. I wasn't really considering myself in that light because I've always put other people first. So first you have to do the evaluation of that relationship, how much you value it, to figure out what you need and what you expect. Okay, so we got that piece. So before we jump further, let's quickly revisit the idea of unconditional love, because I needed to sink deeper for people. 1, unconditional often means absolute or finite, right? Okay. We plug it into the idea of unconditional love, and it usually means that love is given freely without any expectations, strings, or requirements, anything like that. I love you regardless. Thus, the connection with that person is considered to be deep and an unbreakable bond, no matter what. Hence, there's no boundaries, expectations, or rules. Wait, now let's turn that on its ear and let's talk about the role of conditions and how it should play into this. Because think about what I just said. I'm dealing in a situation where there are no strings, no expectations, and no expected return of something, that return that you might expect back might just be respect, honesty, love, whatever, but nothing. You're entering into an agreement with someone that I'm going to give you my all, and in return, I expect nothing. But that doesn't make sense now, does it? Okay. So we revisited with unconditional love, and it's not a bad thing because I'm going to tell you where it plugs into this all and where it can make sense. Remember, if you've got questions, you want to join the conversation, just post into the comments and the chat on YouTube or Facebook. I'll include it and I can share that with you. So this is our episode where we are talking about unconditional love versus conditional love, the danger of a blank check commitment. Say, I'm giving you my all. There's nothing you have to worry about. No matter what you do, I'm there with you. I think I've got some people's wheels turning on this, and I should. And I should, legitimately. So let's talk about the conditional love framework, because there's a framework to this. I don't set you forth on something and not give you some things to chew on or work on. So let's bring in conditional love and commitment and talk about what that looks like and how, even though it's opposite of conditional love, how in their own way, they can have a synchronicity in how they can exist where it's healthy. Because what you want is healthy conditions. When I say conditions, it doesn't mean you get to be unreasonable with somebody. And by the way, if it is unreasonable for them, that's perfectly okay. It is. It can be unreasonable for them. No harm, no foul. A person has a right to tell you what you're asking me of, I'm not capable of. That's something I can't do. In fact, I encourage people, if someone brings forth to you what they need of you and what they expect, and if you know you cannot fill that order, do not fill that order. Do not overpromise and underdeliver. Say, I don't think I'm in a position right now to be able to do that. I need to be honest with you. I appreciate you sharing that with me and telling me that, but I don't have the emotional or mental, financial, whatever bandwidth to meet you at that place. That honesty could make that relationship healthier, and that person may go back and reevaluate it. If they want to have you in their life, they may say, no, that's a deal breaker for me. And I feel like everybody needs to know their deal breakers in relationships. Everybody has deal breakers. I don't care how petty they might be. You have something that will make you say, nope, not doing that. No, thank you. Don't stand too close to me with that one. Can't do it. Everybody has deal breakers. And if you tell me you don't, I'm a little worried about you, because that means, again, you will accept anything. But why will you accept anything if it compromises you? So the word conditional often gets a bad reputation because it's assumed that you're asking something of me, you're demanding. Conditions do not mean demands. Do not confuse it. Conditions are what? Giving you an outline or a framework of what needs to exist within a mutual exchange for people. I tell you I need this, you say yes. You tell me you need this, I say yes, or I say no, and we be like, this may not work. You may go back to the drawing board and bring back some new conditions, and we may figure out how to make this work. That's okay too, because you may find you had a condition that maybe came out of a past relationship, carrying your baggage forward, and you came to realize, you know something, that condition doesn't apply to Maya. Maya is not that person. I'm actually projecting onto Maya something that came from a past relationship. So be careful even of your conditions. This is why the word healthy conditions becomes important, because what we're looking for is balance. Even though the word condition can sound cold and like a business contract, like you do X, I'll give you Y, but the whole purpose of it is to create balance in the relationship. Healthy conditions are actually just boundaries and expectations to help the other person understand how to love you, how to fulfill the needs, how to be present, how to support, how to show up, because you've told them how to do it. They don't have to guess. So the difference is, once I've shown you or told you conditions and you know how to show up, you know how to support me, when you fail to do it, I'll know you are making a conscious choice not to show up with me. And then I might have to explore with you what's going on. Like, you understood this was something that was very important to me. Why would you disregard that? And then you can listen to their answer and you can determine if it makes sense to you. But when someone acts knowing the expectation versus they do something and not knowing, you got to weigh that out at times. Common sense is common sense, though. We're not discounting common sense about what's not acceptable. Everybody knows infidelity is not okay unless you're in an open relationship and you agree to that. But even that probably has conditions. So let me say that. So conditions create boundaries and expectations. Conditional commitments say, now listen up, perk your ears up for this, people. I love you for who you are, but my willingness to stay in this partnership depends on mutual respect, safety, and honesty. Now, does that sound like a problem? Did I say anything that's even remotely unreasonable? That I love you for who you are, because that's actually what unconditional means. I love you for who you are. I can accept who you are. Now, what I do with that acceptance, that's where the idea of condition comes in. Because if me accepting you means I have to mute or negate me in some way, I got to stop, pause, and think. Stop, drop, shut them down, open up shop. Just kidding. Anyways, I'm just kidding. But for real, I'm being honest when I say that though. If I have to mute or suppress any part of myself because of something you've given me as a condition, that may not be a good space for me to be in, because now I'm not thinking about healthy growth as an individual. And what happens when people stop growing individually in relationships? Oh, but that's another episode. Let's move on from that. I don't think by saying to someone that I'm looking for mutual respect, safety, and honesty to be in this relationship with you. If that creates a problem for anybody, you should probably run for the hills, because that means that person they're very selfish, because conditions also mean understand the art of compromise, what matters, what doesn't. So I've been talking about healthy conditions, right? Because they are important. What do healthy conditions look like? Okay, so healthy love must be conditional to stay healthy, because it requires two people. Listen to this, write this piece down. Healthy love is what you're trying to achieve through conditions, healthy conditions. It requires for two people actively choosing to show up for each other. Not I show up for you sometimes, you show up for me sometimes. Mind you, balance in relationship isn't always like this. We go through rough patches. I may have a moment and I may fall off and I'm not at my best. And you get me because you understand me. You accept me. You know I'm going to bounce back, and vice versa for your partner. So there is room for people to have their shortcomings, to make mistakes. Conditions don't mean people don't make mistakes. Don't misunderstand that. But the nature of their mistakes can be very clear about what they do. Let me just say that. It allows you to determine, did you do this without considering my thoughts, my feelings, how this would influence me because you wanted what you wanted? And if you find yourself saying yes to that, you better wonder, why am I here? Because what you're telling me instantly is how you feel, and what you want is more important than me and what makes me happy or makes me feel safe within the relationship. That's an issue. And if you allow someone to be a repeat defender, then understand this. They're going to do it repeatedly. They're not going to stop, because once you accept nonsense from somebody, they keep bringing it back until you stop it. You know, it's like when you're raising kids, they always test the limits. People in relationships often will test your limits. Does it make sense they're testing your limits? No, but they will at times. But that tells you more about that person's personality that maybe you didn't know about them. So when two people decide to show up for each other, that's important. But understand this, because they understand what is needed and expected. That's what showing up for each other means. So when you remove conditions or don't have conditions, I'm going to tell you what you remove from your relationship. One, accountability. Because if there are no consequences for poor behavior, there is no incentive for growth. But more importantly, there's no stable foundation to build on. Think about it this way. I gave the example about credit or even a house. For instance, you go to buy a house. It has terms and conditions, right? You spend all this money. It becomes an asset. You know, you can do so much with your home. You can either keep it, live in it forever. You can choose to rent it out, make money, sell it, move on, whatever. But it's a major investment. It's an asset. You should see your relationship as an asset, because what happens when you purchase a home? You go out of your way to care for it. You want it to maintain its value. In fact, you want its value to grow. You don't want it to lose the value. So ask yourself, why do we think any different about our relationships? Don't you get in? Your relationship should be an asset to your life. It should make you a better person. Even if it challenges you, it should make you better. It should grow over time. You should be achieving goals. But if you find a relationship is dragging you down and you're not living up to expectations and goals you have for yourself, and it's because you feel like you're being pulled in different directions or you don't feel supported, ask yourself, does this investment I just made with this person make sense? I saw you as an asset to be the best thing for me, not a detriment to my growth emotionally and mentally. These are things that people struggle with. So you don't invest your money in things and expect for it not to grow in value. You don't expect to not take care of it. So why do you approach your relationships in any other manner? I'll say it again. We get to relationships and things that make perfect sense. We tend to not want to step up and do it. It doesn't make sense. We like throw all this rationale and logic out the window because we say love. And love is a great thing, but it should not be illogical or irrational. It should not, because that's when people fall into spaces they shouldn't be. So here's the burning question, right? The burning question. How do we balance these two in real life? Well, it all comes down to it's about accountability. Accountability is important. So again, this gets back to when you have terms and conditions in your relationships, AKA expectations and boundaries, it creates accountability because you know now what I expect of you. You know now what I need of you to be happy and to be present in this relationship, but to also support you. And mind you, this is the least sexiest conversation because people only want to have this conversation when the shit hits the fan. Oh, then everybody's got something to say. No one wants to do the legwork to make sure they don't get in that boat. But once that boat capsizes or it sinks, and now they're looking for a life preserver, looking for someone to come and save them. But the thing, what did I say before? You are the gatekeeper. You walk into that relationship, hey, with knowing where your like lifeboat is, you know where, your life jacket is, all the safety procedures in place. But yet people only want to think about this when things go awry. Oh, then that's when they want to do the work. I always think it's interesting. People will be okay with not understanding their mental state until they're in dire straits. And I'm like, don't you understand changing your mindset is the thing that's supposed to help you navigate the dire straits and also make it maybe not as difficult to navigate? But no. Human nature is just the opposite of that. We like negative. So this isn't sexy. So you know what? I don't want to hear about that, but I do want to hear why so-and-so cheated on so-and-so. Oh, that's way more interesting to me. But when somebody cheats on you, oh, what? How did that happen? Why? Really? I guarantee you, if we go and do the work, we can figure out, you may have done anything totally wrong, but I always tell people we are totally not devoid of some responsibilities when our relationships don't work, because were we honest about what we needed and what we expected, or were we so enamored with somebody and we wanted to be with them so bad, we put all those things to the back burner. But even things on the back burner are either going to burn or boil over, one of the two, and you're going to have to deal with it. And that's how most people deal with their relationships. They want something to boil over first, and then they want to deal with it. Forget, let's do the legwork so I don't have to have pots all on my back burner. Nope. People don't work that way. They are okay with letting the chaos ensue because to most people, the work seems like it's too much. So accountability is firmly important because first, it encourages growth. Because separating your feelings of love from the container of commitment provides focus. I love you for who you are, and I want this to be the best thing for us. But with that being said, for this to be the best thing for me to stay present in this relationship, here are the things I need for you. Here are my boundaries. And guess what? When someone is having this conversation with you, they should have questions. Can you tell me why you need that? Because if you think you're hearing a need or an expectation that is built or a layover from a past negative relationship, acknowledge that with that person, that's an interesting thing you expect. Can you tell me why you expect that? And if you hear things like, well, because of my past relationships, I had this problem. Okay, you got to respect that boundary they have. But it's important for you to say, I respect that boundary. But what I do need you to understand, I'm not that person. So I hope moving forward, I hope I have the opportunity to truly show you who I am and that that's not me as a person. It's okay. Respect people's needs and expectations and boundaries they have because they've come from somewhere. It's not for you to break their cycle of bad relationships because you're trying to do all these different things. You're going to break that cycle because you're going to be an upstanding person and do the right things. But it's important to make sure you separate out love from commitment because they're not one and the same. And a lot of people confuse that. So you may say, well, okay, M.A.Y.A, let me ask you something. How do I do that? That doesn't sound simple to me. Okay. Here's the things you need to understand. Here is the real hard truth. And this is why most people fail epically at this, honestly, because you can love someone unconditionally. Yes, there is a place that means I generally wish for you the highest good. I can accept you for who you are, no matter what. But I still have clear conditions on this relationship with you. You can love an addict, but refuse to let them steal from you. You can love an ex partner, but recognize that their behavior means they no longer get access to your life because they're not supporting for you and showing up for you in the way that you need for them to do, especially if you shared that with them. Unconditional love keeps our hearts open, but conditional commitment is the thing that keeps us safe. Let me say that one more time. Unconditional love can keep our hearts open, but conditional love is the thing that keeps us safe. Remember what I said. You're the gatekeeper. You are the protector. So you cannot expect that anybody is going to care for your heart the same way that you're going to. We would like for them to, but the reality of the situation is it doesn't always pan out that way. So the strategy to this is this. So how to deeply love someone while still protecting your peace? It's pretty straightforward in a way, but it's not easy to do. The concept is easy. The action and the follow-up and the behavior is often far more difficult. Start with before you tell someone you love them no matter what. Seriously, take a second to think about what the what means. And when you say that, because you need to ask them, what does that mean? Ask someone, what does unconditional love mean for you? Have those salient conversations to understand where their minds are at when it comes to situations like this. You have to consider your needs, your wants, and the expectations of you, but also your partners. Are they aligned? Are they congruent? If I tell you I need you this and you know you can't do it, don't commit to it. Because one, that's being dishonest, but you're setting us up for failure somewhere down the road if that's something that's really important to me or a deal breaker. A lot of people will say what people want to hear because they want what they want, and they wonder why things don't work because you were never slated to really be able to be present in that relationship, and you know it. For instance, you will hear people say things like this, and people get mad. Date on your level. Date, stay in your lane. Okay, what does that mean? Okay, some people, I think, often try to equate that with looks more than anything else, or maybe wealth. Because we lead with looks and wealth when we start dating people. Okay, attraction's real. If I'm not attracted to you, chances are we're not going to work out. So I'm not going to discount the attraction piece. For some people, if those are two things that mean the world to you, then you go with that. But what I'm going to say is this. If you meet a man, okay, and he says to you, I am looking for a partner that wants to be a stay-at-home wife, raise the kids at home, kind of like take my lead in everything. You need to be okay with if that's the way he sees his relationship unfolding. If you're not that woman, it's okay. You can look at that man and say, something, I respect that that's what you're looking for in a potential partner, but that's not me. I am invested in my career, though I want a family and I want kids and I want to be supportive of my spouse. That's something that's important to me. I've worked really hard for that. I can't imagine giving that up. So I don't think I'm going to be a good fit for you because those things don't align with my personal goals. You don't abandon personal goals when you step into relationships. And a lot of people lose sight of that because they get real goal oriented in a relationship and they lose themselves. And then when they emerge from that relationship, they've changed. They don't understand why things happen. Look at how much of yourself you might have surrendered without realizing you were surrendering yourself because everything seemed good on the surface because you didn't bother to really take a deeper dive. So you need to know what the what really means when someone speaks about what they're looking for in their partner. Consider the needs and the wants. What are the non-negotiables for you and the partner or person you want to be with? The deal breakers. Okay, hey, that's a deal breaker for you. I'm already out the running because I'm not going to be able to meet you there. It's just not within my bandwidth. It's not something I believe in, whatever it is. If you can't do it, if you can't show up, you say it. Now, if they decide they want to still be with you, they're the person that then maybe is saying, I'm making a concession. But then you need to ask a question. You made it seem like that's a deal breaker for you. And when I said that I wasn't able to meet you at that space, now you're saying differently. Why? Because what I'm trying to make sure is that this doesn't become a relationship down the road, like deep down inside, you still really wanted it. But because in the moment you really wanted me, you were willing to put that to the side. But chances are it's going to rise back to the top at some point if it means that much to them. So even if somebody says, okay, I can work with that, you were honest with me, do a little deeper thought on that. Are they just saying that because in the moment they want something, so they're willing to push that to the side to get what they want? But needs always should be met before wants. Wants are the icing on the cake. The needs is what you bake the cake with. So if the ingredients aren't right, that cake may not turn out the way you thought it's going to turn out. You know, you bake a cake without flour, you know what happens. So say, don't bake it. We'll eat it. And then you bake the cake and it's like, this is crappy. Well, we knew it was going to be crappy because it had no flour. Relationships are no different. So if someone says, oh, no, I can work with you. No, you got to say, this may not be a good idea because I don't know if that's truly authentic or real what they're saying in the moment. And you may regret it because your first mind told you. They probably just said it because they wanted what they wanted and they decided to push their needs to the side, because we always go for the wants first often and we table the needs, and the needs are what rise to the top when relationships don't work because you didn't get what you needed, but you did get what you wanted in the moment, right? That's the thing to think about. So think about the non-negotiables. There lies the problem because people often think they can still love deeply if non-negotiables are met. That's where resentment comes in. Be guarded about your boundaries, fiercely about it. There are a few relationships that exist that do not have boundaries or expectations and are healthy, honestly, because they are the things that give us the framework of how to operate something. They're the user manuals. They give us the guidance that we need to be able to meet those expectations. And without them, you're often left on your own to figure things out. People will love you the way they think they should or how they know how to. And I always tell people, the danger in someone loving you the way they know how to doesn't mean it's the way that you need to be loved. And it's up to you to tell them what you need and expect and what your boundaries are, so that if they want to do that, they can know if it's in their wheelhouse to meet you where you're at. It shouldn't be about always having to walk backwards to get to people. Relationships should be about moving forward. And if you start out a relationship having to walk backwards, there lies a red flag right there, because why are you starting moving backwards? Relationships should be moving you forward. Well, everyone, I've been dying to have this conversation and I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it's given you something to chew on, whether it's a romantic relationship, whether it's a relationship you have with family, friendships. Think about your needs and boundaries and how you're moving in those actual relationship dynamics. Is there a reason why you're unhappy? And does it start with the inability to express what you need or to communicate it? And if you feel like you can't, that right there becomes another red flag. So thank you to everyone for tuning in. Remember, you can always find episodes of M.A.Y.A anywhere that you can find my podcast. I mean, you can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. If you name it, you can find it. You just search M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition. You can always listen to it on my website, which is maya-speaks.com. The easy way is just subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is also M.A.Y.A Speaks to You, and you can know when a show is coming up and you won't have to miss anything. And by the way, all of my social media also shares that handle at M.A.Y.A Speaks to You. So you can find that on Facebook, Instagram, as well as X. I am also on TikTok, but like I mentioned earlier, I do not have my TikTok weight up yet, so it's not there. But remember, the super easy way to keep track of all things M.A.Y.A. Remember, I talked about I've got the app. You can take M.A.Y.A on the go, and you can find that in the Apple Store. You can find it in Google Play now, and you can also find it in Amazon. So once you have the app, all the episodes are there, past episodes, current episodes. Also, I have 2 blogs that I post weekly. I have my Me on Pause. It's my menopause blog, as you know about, informing women how to gracefully go through menopause. A lot of information that women don't know, but more importantly, way more products being thrown at you that you probably are going to fix your problem. And I'm going to tell you something, you are being firmly misguided. You must inform yourself. Fellas, by the way, your version is called andropause. And I have not forgotten you either. You are on my list to launch something to support you as well, because many of the things that you go through equally looks a lot like going through the process of menopause. But men, you're told it's a midlife crisis. You also struggle with stuff. You're next on my docket to give you information as well. So you can find that blog on my app, as well as I have a weekly inspirational to give you some thoughts to reflect on. All those things are right there in the app. So if you want to make life easy, I will ask you, kindly download the M.A.Y.A Experience app. That's in the Apple Store, Google Play, as well as Amazon as well. And there you go. You won't have to miss a single thing. That's M.A.Y.A. All right, everybody, that's it for this episode. Ooh, and I'm going to tell you, it was definitely something I couldn't wait to talk to people about. And I understand it's not a sexy conversation, but if we're looking to shift your mindset, it all starts with love. I tell people all the time, the most important relationship you have in this world is your relationship with yourself. When you are good with you, you will feel it in almost every area of your life. You will feel it in your romantic relationships and family dynamics, friendships. You'll feel it at work. And to be honest, the other thing I tell people, when you have a good relationship with you, you're going to instantly notice that some people aren't going to be okay with that. Because once you step up and you begin to advocate for yourself, many people don't do well with that. They're used to you saying yes and not no, or I can't. And it's important when you start to advocate for yourself to know it's never wrong to say no if saying yes is not the right thing for you. And so many people really, truly struggle with that. Well, everybody, until next time, remember, your present becomes your past and your future is no more. So you should live every single day to the fullest. All right. Until next time, everyone, stay safe and stay amazing. Check you out then.
Whether you're on the go or listening on your cell phone, tablet, or laptop, you can find the show in the iTunes, Google, and iHeartRadio platforms.
With all due respect, I believe this is going to be our finest hour.
Just search M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition, and get ready to be inspired and motivated to harness your ambition.